It's showtime, folks.
Absolute cinema. Justin Lynch, Bhawkmemes, back for another video. Today I'll be talking about the Blackhawks special teams units, potential special teams units for next season, particularly the power play and penalty kill. I'll talk about other situations as well, 3-on-3, 4-on-4, shootout, all that fun stuff. But I mostly want to talk about what the power play and penalty kill should look like next year. What kind of what kind of combinations players would make the most sense together out there. I've talked a lot about even strength in terms of what the Blackhawks line should look like. I might still do more content on that as we approach the season, or maybe come training camp time we start to see the first batch of combos out there by Jet Blashill. I might do a follow up on that, particularly without Bedard versus Bedard being in the lineup. But today I want to take a look at the Blackhawks special teams because beyond even strength, special teams are a key factor in determining success. Last year the Blackhawks, it was a tale of two special teams, right? The penalty kill was fantastic. It was second in the league for a good portion of the year. It was actually first in the league. Only the President's Trophy winning Colorado Avalanche iced a better penalty kill unit the Blackhawks had last year. And the power play sucked. The power play was 29th in the league. It was near the bottom of the NHL last year. So they were very much opposites last year. And funny enough, as we get into this oncoming season, I think they could swap next year. I really think that the power play penalty kill could be in opposite ends this upcoming season. I think we're going to get into it today, but I think with the additions and departures this summer, I think the Blackhawks power play has gotten better. I think the penalty kill has gotten worse. So I'll get into it. First of all, starting with the power play. The power play one unit that I would put together. And those five players, I think that would make the most sense. I got this is all when Bedard comes back, by the way, too. Of course, first month of the year, it's gonna look different. But like for the sake of this video, I'm just gonna talk about it with a healthy team when Bedard's back, whenever it is that he returns. All right, my first unit, I got Bertuzzi, backdoor Bert in his usual backdoor slot. I got Frundell in the dot, Connor Bedard, Bowen Byram is the power play quarterback, and then Patrick Kane is the offensive facilitator on the point, where he's normally run throughout his Blackhawks career, right? And where he's run the past few years in Detroit. So, and of course, Bedard, Frundell on the flanks, right? So I think this unit would make sense. Of course, Bertuzzi, I don't really have to explain. I mean, last year the Blackhawks power play ran pretty much entirely through Bedard and Bertuzzi. Those two absolutely carried the Blackhawks power play. Outside those players, didn't really get much production from anybody. So Bertuzzi stays in the first unit. You would think he should be able to have another, strong year this year. That's just based on the fact that, with Kane coming in, with Byron coming in, if he's still playing Bedard as well, like Bertuzzi should get a lot of high endanger chances this year. They should get a lot of those usual garbage goals, 5 feet from the net, his usual deflections, tip-ins, and all that stuff. So Bertuzzi, he's a smart hockey player. He knows how to position himself. He's going to get those deflections, those tip-in goals, net front. So keep him in that slot. I think it makes sense there. I think Frundell, he could be the centerman. He could take the draws, and then I think he could be on the opposite flank of Bedard. I think Frundell and Bedard on the flanks, looking at each other for those cross-ice seam passes, I think makes sense for those two. Both opposite shots as well, so that that makes that work too. So I think Frundell should be a factor on his power play. Frundell was very good on the power play in Sweden last year for his Djurgården squad. He got a lot of goals with the dangerous one-timer release he has in the power play. So Frundell should be a big factor in hopefully engineering a stronger Blackhawks power play this year. Bedard, obviously in the first unit, don't really have to explain that one, right? But I do have him kind of in a different position here. Because normally Bedard is sort of in the Patrick Kane slot, but with Patrick Kane coming in, I think Kane takes over that spot on the top of the point with Bowen Byram. I think Bowen Byram is obviously your power play quarterback in terms of defenseman. Last year it was kind of Bedard because especially towards the end of the year, the Blackhawks didn't really have a defenseman last year that they could kind of rely upon as the power play quarterback. They tried Lebshina, they tried Brunzell, they tried a few other guys too. They never really found that guy. Eventually it became so bad that Connor Bedard was the Blackhawks power play quarterback last year. They actually ran a 5-4 unit towards the end of last year. I think with Bowen Byram coming in, I'd be surprised if they did that again. I think Byram, absolutely will be in that first unit. He's never really had that chance, right? Bowen Byram is a very, talented offensive defenseman, but he's always been behind somebody, right? In Colorado, Cale Makar was their top power play guy. And then, of course, in Buffalo is Rasmus Dahlin. So this is the first time that Byram will get the chance to thrive in a first, power play quarterback position there. I think if Byram's production is going to go up this year, this will be a big reason why. Like he and Patrick Kane, the two new additions this summer, are going to have to be the two biggest factors in terms of, improving this Blackhawks power play, right? Of course, Frondell Kanchuk coming in is going to help as well. But really, I think it's going to have to be those two, the two veterans there, right? Patrick Kane's going to be such a factor there. Of course, Kaner, we know he's getting up there in age. We know he's past his prime days. But one area I would say that he's just as strong he's always been is the power play. You watch his game the past 3 years in Detroit. The Red Wings have had a very good power play the past 3 years, and Patrick Kane is a big reason why. We know the vision he has. We know his ability to set up his line mates. We know his hockey IQ, right? He's always been able to engineer a strong power play. He's always able to find guys. He's got a good wrister as well, but mostly it's his ability to set up guys, right? It's Patrick Kane's vision. It's his playmaking ability. That's still very much there. So I think, you have a first power play unit with Bedard and Kane together, with Bertuzzi in the net front, Byram quarterback in the unit, Frondell there as well. There is no reason why that shouldn't be an elite, dangerous, first power play unit. I think that would definitely get the bulk of the ice time. In terms of the 2 minutes, like that unit would probably be out there for a minute, 30 seconds. You would think the second unit would get kind of the last 30 seconds. There are some teams do it where they kind of split it, where the first unit gets a minute, the second unit gets a minute. I think this unit is so loaded, you have to front load it. You have to give those 5 guys, I think, as much time out there as possible. So, but I think you'll notice as well, I do have Bedard and Kane together in the first unit. There is some sense of logic in terms of maybe you want to split those two up. Maybe you have Bedard on one unit and then Kane in the other unit. For now, I'm front loading it. Like, I've always been a believer in front loading that first unit. If you want to balance out the wealth and kind of have a couple of these guys in the second unit to create 2 more balanced units, you can do that. But I think for me, if the Blackhawks want a better power play, they're going to have to front load that first unit. I think these are the best 5 players I think you can put together in terms of kind of creating the best first power play unit they can have. So that's my first power play unit. I think that makes the most sense. And then getting into my second power play unit, I got Oliver Moore, Roman Kantsarov, Nick Lardis, Frank Nazar, and Artie Party Lepshinov. So you notice I actually have Kantsarov as a centerman taking the draws. Kantsarov is primarily a winger, but he could play center as well. I think even strength on this Blackhawks team, he should play wing. I think the power play, though, it makes sense for him to take the draws. He did a lot in Russia. Just like Frondell, Kantsarov was very effective in the power play last year for his Magnitogorsk squad in the KHL. He got a lot of production there, particularly in kind of the Bertuzzi slot. Kantsarov got a lot of those goals at kind of those high danger areas in net front. He got a lot of those tip-in goals, those deflections and kind of the high danger areas there, those grade A chances. So I think Kantsarov makes sense kind of in that slot. Then you got Oliver Moore and Nick Lardis kind of on the flanks, just like the first unit where you have Frondell and Bedard in the flanks. This unit, I got Oliver Moore and Nick Lardis together on the flanks, setting each other up for those cross-ice seam passes, those one-timers. I think Oliver Moore and Nick Lardis are 2 players that have already developed some very nice chemistry with each other. I want to see this team keep developing chemistry with those guys. I think those 2 make a lot of sense together. I think even strength, special teams, I want to see those 2 play together. I think those 2's games complement each other very well. I think of Oliver Moore's playmaking ability, pair of Nick Lardis' sniping, his release. I think those 2 make a ton of sense together on the power play. And then you got Frank Nazar up there in kind of the Patrick Kane slot there as sort of the offensive facilitator on the point. And then I got Artie Lepshinov as the power play quarterback in terms of the defenseman back there. Lepshinov is definitely the one I feel the least confident of here. I think in his prime, I think as Lepshinov develops, he could develop into a very nice power play quarterback. He's not there yet. I think we saw it last year. Lepshinov's not quite there yet, particularly when it comes to breaking the puck into the zone, but drop passes. He struggled there last year. But I do think Lepshinov has some solid offensive instincts. He did get a decent amount of assists on the power play last year. So in terms of, we know Byram's the number 1 guy in terms of defenseman on the power play. After that, there's kind of a question mark in terms of who's the number 2 guy. I think, you could argue Lepshinov. If you want to argue Renzel, you can. If you want to put Renzel here, you absolutely can as well. Renzel is another guy that we think can be a very good power play quarterback down the line. Hasn't really showed it yet, but you think of the speed, the talent, his game, eventually he could be very good in that slot. So if you want to put Renzel there, you can. Another guy I think that you could argue is Wyatt Kaiser. Kaiser's more known for his defensive game, but I do think he's a good skater. He's got offensive instincts. I do think he could be a guy, especially with his ability to kind of walk the blue line. I think he would make sense in that second unit, but I just think Blash will be more likely to play an Artie Renzel versus a Kaiser, especially when Kaiser will get to it. I think he'll be relied upon enough on the penalty kill anyway. So yeah, I think Artie's probably the defenseman that gets the nod there. But yeah, in terms of the forwards for the second unit, I think Moore, Kantsarov, Lardis, Nazar makes sense. You will notice there's a couple guys you might notice that aren't here. Teravainen, I don't have in the second unit. Teravainen was actually on the first unit for a good chunk of last year. I don't have Teravainen in either of these units. I really think there are 8 forwards in this team I'd rather see in the power play than Teravainen at this stage. There honestly are. I'd rather play, one of the young guys than Morin Lardis. I wouldn't be surprised if Blashill takes one of those guys out and has Teravainen somewhere. I'd be surprised if Teravainen didn't feature somewhere on the power play. But for me, I'd much rather see, the young guys prioritize the guys that they're going to be here for the long haul. That are big future core players for this team. I'd rather see those guys there. I just got a tornado. I actually just got a tornado warning on my phone, so that's what that was. So, yeah, that's very interesting right there. But anyway, continuing on. That's Chicago, Illinois for you. I guess there's a tornado going on. So, hopefully it's not approaching this house right now, and hopefully we'll be okay. But yeah, no, I think for the second unit, I think more Kanserov, Lardis, Nazar, Artie. I think that's probably the best you could do for the second unit. So yeah, recapping the power play units. First unit, I got Bertuzzi, Frendel, Bedard, Byram, Kane. Second unit, I got Moore, Kanserov, Lardis, Nazar, Artie. There is no reason why the Blackhawks power play shouldn't be better this year with those players, with Patrick Kane, one of the greatest power play, influencers of all time, with Carbadar, with Backdoor Burt, with Frondell Kanchog coming in. Both of them are very elite on their respective power play units in Europe last year. With Frank the Tank, Nick Lardis scored 70-plus goals in junior hockey on the power play. There is no reason. The Blackhawks have the players. They have the talent. The Blackhawks power play should be at least top half of the league this year. Really, I think it should be top 10. And if it's still at the bottom of the league, then that's an indictment on the coaching staff and the system because the players are absolutely here. I think last year you could say the players weren't there, but this year, if we have Byram and Kane coming in and you have the rookies of Frendel and Kanserov, there is no reason the Blackhawks power play shouldn't be good this year. And if it isn't, then that's a problem with the coaching staff. It's not a problem with the players, in my opinion. So yeah, that's what I do for the power play. Again, wouldn't be surprised if the power play, it should be a lot better this year. And if it isn't, then that's an issue. Anyway, transitioning into the penalty kill. Now, the penalty kill, I think I have the opposite opinions of. The penalty kill was fantastic last year. I do think this year it could be worse. Of course, you lose Ilya Mikheyev, who was the Blackhawks' top penalty killing forward last year. You lose, of course, they traded Jason Dickinson. They traded Connor Murphy at last year's trade deadline. So those guys are gone. Louis Crevier is gone as well. So a lot of the Blackhawks' top penalty killers from last year are gone. So I do think the penalty kill is probably going to be worse this year. With that said, is that a player thing or is it a system thing? Because if it's a system, then the Blackhawks could still have a pretty good penalty kill this year. But anyway, this is what I would do with the players we have here. I think the first penalty kill unit, I got Ryan Green and Cole Smith as the forwards, with Alex Vlasic and Ian Cole as a defenseman. I think Ryan Green, makes sense as he's sort of, I think he could fill in for Jason Dickinson. He could be kind of that, that third line Jason Dickinson shutdown center, or wing. He could play wing as well. But I think Ryan Green will be counted on the penalty kill. He played a lot of units. He played a lot of minutes, on the penalty kill unit last year. He's very good there. Very good defensive forward, right? Very responsible shutdown player. So I think Green's a guy I feel very confident relying upon the penalty kill. Even on the first unit, I think he makes sense there. Could take the draws. And then we got Cole Smith on the wing. For what I know about Cole Smith, he's a very good penalty killer. I think that's why the Blackhawks brought him in. Not saying he's the Ilya Mikheyev replacement because he's a different player, but I think that's kind of what they want to be. I think they're probably going to put him in the first unit. One of those guys, I know Jordan Greenway's another guy, another veteran addition. I think from what I know is very good in the penalty kill, so he's a guy that could feature there as well. But I think Green and Smith together is probably most likely, and then Vlasic and Ian Cole. We still got Alex Vlasic back there, so that's, we can feel good about that. We know Vlasic's a very good penalty killer, so we saw it last year with what he and Crevier were able to do in the penalty kill, so we no longer have Crevier, but Vlasic can count on there, and then Ian Cole as well. You do have two left shot down there, but I think, Cole is a guy I think that can play in his offhand as well, so from what I know about Ian Cole, another very good penalty killer. He can block shots, he can get in the way, of the passing lanes, he can use his stick, create kind of those turnovers there. Cole is a very, solid defensive defenseman, so I think Vlasic, Cole together, those are the two best defensemen I think you could put on the first penalty kill unit. So yeah, Green, Smith, Vlasic, Cole is my first penalty kill unit. And then my second penalty kill unit, I got Frank the Tank Nazar, Oliver Moore, Wyatt Kaiser, and Boehm Byram. I think Nazar Moore together, makes a ton of sense. We've seen those two kind of play together on the penalty kill before, right? Of course, those two are, they're, skilled forwards, but they're also defensively responsible. We've seen it with both Nazar and Moore. They're, the players you can rely upon defensively. What I like about those two together, the penalty kill, is you could create shorthanded chances, right? Especially if you're down late in the game, right? You need a goal to tap the game, but you're on the penalty kill. Put that second unit out there. I think with Nazar and Moore, with their speed, I think they could generate those breakaways, those shorthanded chances, and maybe, get some shorthanded goals there. So, I think those two together make sense. And then you got Kaiser and Byram. Byram has to play in the penalty kill. I know he's more of an offensive defenseman, but like, considering, the role he's going to play here, what we gave up, Byram has to be counted on both ways. It can't just be good offensively. He's got to be good defensively as well. So I do feel better about him being on the second unit compared to the first unit. So that's why I have him on PK2. And then I think Wyatt Kaiser makes sense as well. I think paired with Bo and Byram, Kaiser we know is a very solid defensive defenseman. So I think those two together, I think, makes sense. There's a couple guys that left out here. You notice Tara Vinen once again left out. I'd be surprised. Again, these are the units that I would do. They're not necessarily the units I expect the team to roll out. I think Blashill probably is going to feature Teravainen on the penalty kill. Teravainen, to be fair, is a solid defensive four, but once again, I'd rather see a Nazar, I'd rather see a Moore versus a Teravainen utilized on the special team. So that's why I have him left out. He's got 1 year left in that contract. I'd be surprised if he was here beyond this year. So I'd rather play players in these positions that I know are going to be here, that are going to be core guys that we rely upon. You want to see those guys grow into those roles, right? There are a few guys who you might not typically play in these positions, but like, look, you want to see these guys grow into those roles. You want to see Levshinov grow into being a power play quarterback. You want to see Nazar Moore grow into kind of being relied upon that shorthanded, situation, right? So I think you want to play these young guys in those positions. You want to give them those chances, right? I will say though, I think bringing in some of these veteran guys that we have, I think it does take some of the pressure off a lot of these guys to kind of immediately become that, and kind of helps these guys kind of ease into those roles, right? So I think that's another positive, I think, of the moves we made this summer. It adds some competition. It adds some kind of competition for spots in this lineup in terms of who's going to play in those roles, right? But yeah, that's what I run for the penalty kill. So recapping the penalty kill: PK1, I got Green, Smith, Vlasic, Cole. PK2, I got Nazar, Moore, Kaiser, Byram. So those are my power play and penalty kill units. Again, penalty kill, I think, probably going to be worse this year. We'll see. Hopefully it could still be a solid unit. I'd like to see it be at least, mid-pack. I think it could still, finish mid-pack. I'd be surprised if it was top half of the league again. I'd be surprised if it was amongst the best units. I think after all the losses we've had, I think it's probably going to be, it's going to be impacted by that. But I still think it could be a solid unit. But again, wouldn't be surprised if the power play actually had the penalty kill this year. But we'll see, right? We'll see. I think this year we'll learn, whether it's a player thing, whether it's a system thing by this new coaching staff, right, under Jeff Blashill. Anyway, moving on from the power play penalty kill, I got some other units to talk about here. First off, the 3-on-3 overtime unit. Blackhawks were terrible after regulation last year. Post 60 minutes, Blackhawks struggled last year. The overtime record wasn't good. They left a lot of points on the table by losing a lot of overtime shootout games. So I think this year, they should have some better. They have some better players there. That I think the Blackhawks should have a better record after 60. My first 3-on-3 unit, I think that I roll out. We got Connor Bedard, Patrick Kane, and Bo and Byram. Now, I like this first unit, man. I think Bedard, Kane, Byram together. There's no reason why those three shouldn't be a dynamic trio together. I think those three should be able to, should be able to win a lot of games in overtime there. Bedard and Kane together in overtime, I think could be a lot of fun to watch. You give those two all that extra ice, that extra space to work with. I think those two could kind of connect for some overtime winners there. So I think Bedard and Kane make sense. Of course, Byram's going to be in that first unit as well. But I think those three together would be a ton of fun to watch in overtime. And that should be a pretty dangerous unit that should win you a lot of games in overtime, you would think. Next up, we got Frundell, Kancherov, Vlasic. So that's my second unit. I think the rookies of Frundell, Kancherov together would be a lot of fun to watch. Then you got kind of the veteran of Vlasic to kind of stabilize those guys. But yeah, again, I think another fun unit there. And my third unit, I got Frank Nazar, Nick Lardis, and Wyatt Kaiser. Nazar, Lardis, we already know they've already developed that chemistry with each other. So, and then Wyatt Kaiser, I think you'll compliment those guys well. And then this fourth unit kind of threw together. I feel less confident about this one, but I got Oliver Moore, Tyler Bertuzzi, and Artie Lebshinov. If you want to put Renzel there, go ahead. But yeah, Moore and Bert together. I mean, more speed with Bertuzzi's kind of knack for getting those garbage goals. That could be a decent duo. We'll see. But yeah, those are my 3-on-3 units. I also got a few 4-on-4. Actually, I'll do the shootout first. So my shootout rotation, I'll just go through my top 5 guys. Of course, it could go further, but I'll just go through my top 5 guys. We know Bedard and Kane are going to be 1-2. Like, we know those two are going to lead things off, of course. After that, you kind of make the argument for a few guys. I think there's a few guys you can make arguments for. I got Nazar as my 3rd guy. Lardis is my 4th guy. Then Kancherov is my 5th guy. If you want to put Moore there, if you want to put Frundell there, go ahead, right? But I think that's probably the top 5 that makes most sense. Bedard, Kane, Nazar is your top 3. Those are the 3 that are guaranteed to get a rep. And then if it keeps going, I think Lardis, Kancherov to kind of lead things off there, I think. And that makes sense there. But yeah, again, shootout as well. Bedard and Kane together in the shootout, are you kidding me? Blackhawks should be they should have a better shootout overtime record this year, you would think, compared to last year. And then I'll talk about a few 4-and-4 units as well. Of course, you don't see 4-and-4 as much in the NHL today with 3 players in overtime versus 4, but you still see it. Even strength when both teams are in the box, got players in the box, you still see 4-4 situations occasionally. But first unit, I got Bedard, Kane, Vlasic, Byram. Second unit, I got Frundell, Kantserov, Kaiser, Artie. And then third unit, I got Nazar, Lardis, Cole, Renzel. So, but yeah, that's pretty much all of my special teams. Obviously, there's more than that. There's 4-and-3, there's 5-and-3, there's other special team situations. But those are kind of the main ones that I thought that I would cover today, kind of get into. So, but yeah, I think to recap, Blackhawks special teams, of course, it's going to have to play a big factor. It's not just even strength play, but they're going to have 2 units, probably the top half of the league. I feel better about the power play in terms of the players we can ice compared to the penalty kill, but we'll see, right? We'll see. And then again, I think Blackhawks, if they're going to get in that mix this year, they can't leave as many points on the table this year. So I think if they're able to win more games, after 60 and overtime shootout, that should bode well for this team. But anyway, that's all I got for this one. Thank you all so much for watching this video. This is Justin Lynch, Bhawkmemes out. If you like this video, feel free to like it, subscribe to the channel for more content, hide the video on YouTube, leave a comment if you if you have something to say about it, and also feel free to share, friends, family, whoever, Blackhawks fans in your life, feel free to share the video around. All right, so I got this one. Justin Lynch, Bhawkmemes out, and I'll see you on the next one, baby. Bye-bye. Absolute cinema. I should probably go downstairs at this tornado warning. I don't want to get swept up in the tornado. So anyway, that's all I got for this one. Boop.